The next speaker, Reflections on MSP in Europe by Holger Janßen, Leibniz Institute of Baltic Sea Research. Please have the podium.
Thank you. Yeah, please allow me the comment to Lars that maybe Germany is a sunnier country than he might remember. So for solar power plants, there might be a good reason, but this will be a separate discussion. Yeah, you all know that we have now this European Framework Directive on Marine Spatial Planning coming up. It has been agreed from now on. It's just a technical process to bring it into force. And of course, this might be a good moment to have a few reflections on whether we are well prepared or not. If we look for the directive, of course, then it's a compromise. This might be needless to say because it's a European policy, and any European policy will be a compromise, of course. If we just look in brief what it says, then the most simple thing is each member state shall establish and implement marine spatial planning. One part of the compromise is that the ICZM or ICM element was lost during this long discussion process that we had. But as it is typical maybe for the way how European policies evolve, we have again a compromise saying that marine spatial planning shall take into account then sea interactions, whatever this means in the different contexts of different countries. So there's still some kind of coastal management left. And then there's something which might remind us that if you look from the long-term history on international development on marine spatial planning, that marine spatial planning as a concept came up from the environmental protection sector. It was not really a concept of spatial planners or others or people interested in blue growth. It came from natural protection. So there's a statement saying in Article 4 that we shall give due regard to the specialities of marine regions, including environment. This does not only mean environment, also economic conditions, cultural conditions, social conditions, but there might be a slight focus on the environment. It becomes a bit more interesting, I guess, if we look for the objectives that are written in this framework directive. And one is sustainable development. Lars just mentioned it. And growth. And growth is already another emphasis coming in here, giving a clear direction towards sustainable development, possibly. Of course, it's also saying that we have to apply the ecosystem-based approach. And personally, I would say even more interesting, it says that it shall contribute to the development of fisheries, for example. We might hear tomorrow that currently this is not always the case. And this is again the remembrance of this history of MSP to the improvement of the environment. A few formalities more, implementation into national law within 2 years after it came into force. That might be possibly late summer, autumn this year, so then autumn, winter 2016. This needs to be implemented into national law. The directive foresees also reporting towards the European Commission, marine spatial plans ready by 2021, revision periods, and then standard spatial planners tools like cooperation, participation, the 3 pillars of sustainability, etc., etc. We have spatial planning processes in different qualities, in different stages of development in most of our European countries. Within the Baltic Sea, even now, Denmark agreed on introducing spatial planning on the sea. Russia is making great progress towards introduction of MSP. So there is a lot of things going on, both in the administrations, also in research. We have, oh sorry, this was too quick. We have, in addition to the national efforts, as we will hear soon in the next presentation, transnational groupings like Helcom Vasa, for example. We have a number of research projects going on. This is just what the European Atlas of the Seas is showing. I guess actually we might have much more projects dealing with marine spatial planning, not only these. So there's a number of money, a great amount of money going around, ideas and experience are made. But are we well prepared if we have all this in mind? Well, you can see, well, of course, yes, we have a history now of more than 10 years talking about this. We have different things that we have learned. We are much more forward than maybe we might have assumed a couple of years before. But there are a few issues that might make us some headache, or maybe should make us some headache. One issue is, for example, this one. This is a map of the marine, or not of the marine, of the Natura 2000 areas in Europe. And if we look for the relevance of these areas, then of course one element of marine spatial planning, or spatial planning at all, is always the stock take. And you look for what do you have in your area. And one element might be that, of course, first of all, you might look for these valuable habitats, and then you add different layers of information on it, and to finally develop your planning alternatives. But if we look for the quality of protection areas in the sea, then we have a number of research publications, of policy statements also saying that MPAs have a wrong focus quite often. They do not work. Here, for example, Bersma and Parrish, Barn, Possingham, Hunt, they said that MPAs show poor representativity, so saying that it's not all the species that should be included in protection areas that are there. Kelleher even said that only 31% of the MPAs worldwide were achieving their objectives in 1995. I would assume that by today this is not very different from the situation 20 years ago. Jameson said that the great majority of marine protected areas are just paper parks. They are not properly managed. And the latest publication here is a position paper of the European Marine Board saying that there's a strong need for a radical reform of the European Natura 2000 network. So, what are the reasons behind these statements? In most cases, our marine protected areas have the wrong size. They are simply too small to work. They are not really a network as it should be. They are not really linked. There's no exchange of species between these networks, or the single elements of the networks. The representativity of species and functions is low. They are not really protected areas, even if they're called so, because you usually are allowed to do a lot of things in these networks. They're not really managed. And the focus quite often is on species instead of on functions. And having things like climate change in mind, I guess we might need to concentrate more often on ecosystem functions in these marine protected areas than on single species. One challenge, and also one solution, might be to integrate the design process of marine protected areas into a broader scale concept of marine spatial planning and coastal management. We all know this. There are many papers on this saying this, but actually this is seldom be practiced. There are also a few criteria that we know that we should take into account if we want to have a really good working network of protected areas. These areas should be really protected, they should be well enforced, they should be old, large, and sufficiently isolated. This also means that you shouldn't allow heavy industries working directly on the border of a protected area. So there might be something like a buffer zone, what will have an influence also on spatial planning then. If we look for conflicts with these issues in and around marine spatial planning, then of course we might have, not necessarily will, but might have a problem to achieve both growth and the environmental objectives that we have also in the upcoming framework directive. talking about blue growth, we should have in mind that we might need to go for smart blue growth. Of course, having in mind things like ecosystem services and so on, we will be able, I guess, to achieve both better environmental conditions and economic revenues, but we need to have smart concepts. And then, of course, there's these, you might say, counterpart of marine spatial planning. You might even say it's one element of marine spatial planning. This is a more philosophical question, but the MSFD obliges us to get increasing, I said I want to have a yellow card, very good. Environmental quality, this is something we have to have in mind talking about marine spatial planning. Of course, these lack of clarity that we have talking about marine protected areas, whether they are on the wrong spot now or whether we have wrong sizes, bad connections, does also mean that we have an uncertainty for marine spatial planning. How to develop a plan around these areas if we do not know whether they are on the right spot currently. Of course, we could say that the precautionary principle mentioned by Lars should be implemented here as a solution, but then we need knowledge where do we have to leave space open to maybe enlarge a protected area. Of course, what we need is an integration of these environmental elements already in the marine spatial planning process. And something we do not really have yet, but which is a very old statement from the European Conference of Ministers for Regional Planning from 1983, is that spatial planning should be an overall strategy. And doing spatial planning, we need to have in mind that it's not environment versus development, but it's both together. Thank you.